Well, good day everybody and welcome back. Well, today's video is a typewriter basics video, and we're really talking about the old Underwood standard typewriters like this Underwood 5 from 1920. And we're going to look at how do you set your margins, your paper guide for a machine that doesn't have a paper bail, and you want the typing position at the left margin to match what the left margin scale says on the machine. How do you get the thing set up to type properly on letter-sized paper? Typewriter Basics. Stay tuned. Well, let's familiarize ourselves with the layout of the Underwood 5. So one of the most distinctive features is the margin scale and margin controls are on the front of the carriage instead of the back. And because of that, the controls are actually reversed. So this is the left margin setting and this is the right margin setting. You simply pinch the knob and slide it like that. And then instead of a standard paper bail, it just has two paper fingers, one on each side, and these can slide left and right. These are designed to hold the edge of the paper down flat, but they can interfere with the actual typing. You don't want to get them so far in that your type slugs are hitting this metal piece, right? And then thirdly, you have the paper guide that defines where the left edge of the paper is back here on the paper table. So all of these are interactive, interrelated, and what we want to do is get them so that when we set our left margin, for instance, to 1 inch, that we're actually printing at 1 inch in from the left edge of the paper, and the paper fingers aren't interfering with the typing. So there is a peculiarity with regards to these paper fingers that you have to be aware of. So they're kind of an angled piece of metal that slides on a rod, and then they have the roller and this curved piece of metal that keeps the paper pressed down against the platen. But because of this design, you can only move the paper finger in as far as the left edge of the paper hits this bracket. You can't really move it in any further. But also, you can't have a margin way out toward the edge of the paper. For instance, it's about 1 inch from this left side to the right side of this bracket. If you want to put a very narrow margin on a thin piece of paper, you'll be hitting this piece of metal with your type slugs. You don't want to do that. So these machines with paper fingers are kind of designed to have wider margins, at least 1 inch in from the edge of the paper. Just be aware of that. To get prepared to put my paper in the typewriter and get everything set up so it'll work right, the first thing I want to do is move the paper fingers out to their extreme edges. But you'll notice on the left paper finger, it's going to hit the little knob for the line spacing selector. So, well, you can sort of go beyond it, but if you go right in the middle there where the vertical part of the paper finger will actually hit the knob. So just be aware of that. That's about as far as you can go on the left paper finger. On the right paper finger, it'll go all the way out to this bracket here. You're no problem like that. So I just want to move the paper fingers out as far as they'll go. And then we're going to feed the paper into the machine and then get it straightened. And then we want to get positioned so that our left margin matches where the printing position actually starts on the left side of the paper. I'm going to set up this machine with a 1 inch left-hand margin, and there's a reason for that. First of all, this is a pica typeface machine. It has 10 characters per inch. So when you look on the margin scale, this 10 here is actually 1 inch, and you can actually measure that and verify it. So my left margin control is set at the 10 character mark, which is 1 inch. And then the second thing that's important to realize is that this paper guide back here on the paper table is exactly 1 inch wide. That gives us the ability to gauge where to place the paper when we thread it into the machine. All right, let's feed the paper in. Then I'm going to release the feed rollers, paper release, and I'm going to straighten out the paper so we know it's straight. Okay, so my paper is fed into the machine and I have it fairly straight, left and right. I want to release the paper release so the paper is free to move. So now I'm going to move the carriage to the left margin. We've set the left margin to the 10 position, which because it's a 10 character per inch machine, it's 1 inch in from the left edge. Now the next thing is to position the paper itself. Well, how do we know where an inch in on the paper is? Well, you could put a pencil mark, but there's actually a handy little guide here. The left paper finger happens to be, well, both paper fingers happen to be an inch wide from the vertical part here to the right side of the paper support. So if you line up that right edge of that paper support right to the printing position where the type slugs come in to the guide and hit the paper, if you line it up properly, you'll know that that is an inch in, and you line your paper up to that point so the left edge of the paper is now even with this vertical part of the paper finger. Then you can move your paper guide in to match that position so the edge of the paper guide, the vertical part of the paper finger are even with each other and they're both touching the left side of the paper. And then we'll release our paper release, re-engage it, and then the next thing we're going to do is set the fingers themselves. So the right finger, I like to set it so that the roller, the right edge of the roller is right even with the right edge of the paper. But you don't want the paper finger so far inboard that you're interfering with the typing position. You don't want the type slug hitting the finger itself. So you want to make sure you are out far enough to where you're going to clear the finger and hit just paper. And the left finger, you can actually move it back now, out of the way a little bit more. And I usually position it so it's somewhere around the left side of the roller is even with the left edge of the paper. So now, when we start typing, we're going to be actually an inch in from the left edge of the paper, and it matches the inch in margin that we've set. So now that we've done this, we can actually move the paper fingers a little bit if we need to adjust them, but what's really setting the relationship between the paper's position and the margin scale is our paper guide. We have properly set the position of the paper guide so when the paper's left edge is resting against it, it'll match the margin that we've set. And so you might want to put a little mark or even a little piece of tape or whatever on this back rail just to mark where the paper guide should go so you don't have to go through the whole rigmarole of doing this again. Now that you've set your paper fingers, one other thing you want to do is to make sure the paper finger is resting on the outside of this bottom curved part of the paper pan. This way, when the paper feeds through the platen, it'll go right underneath this paper finger roller. However, if this tip of this finger is caught underneath the paper pan, the paper may feed around the outside of it and not go underneath the roller. So I'm going to make sure that this is set like this. I'm going to actually push the paper finger slightly outboard so that I'm certain that the tip of this curved finger is on the outside of the pan. And I'm going to make sure also the same on the right hand paper finger. Make sure the tip of that finger is on the outside of the curved paper pan. And if we've done this right, when we put our piece of paper in, it should go right underneath the rollers just like that. Smooth as silk, ready to type, and then you can deploy the little center support finger. Start at the top edge of your paper wherever you want to. You're ready to type. Well, I hope this was of some help to you if you have one of these older Underwood standard typewriters like the 5 or the 6 or similar models. It all comes down to properly positioning the paper guide and your paper fingers. And once you do that, it feeds the paper so smoothly. The paper goes right underneath the rollers of the paper fingers when you're rolling it in the machine. It makes it very convenient to load paper. Well, this is all about creativity, sitting down at your typewriter and being able to hammer out thoughts onto paper. And I wish you the very best in your creative adventures. Until next time, have a great day.